teenager posts an anti-LGBTQ+ and anti-Semitic manifesto online. Then, standing outside a gay bar in Slovakia's capital, he shoots and kills 2 people. He claims inspiration from Peyton Gendron, a teenager in New York who live-streamed the murder of 10 black people at a grocery store. Gendron, driven by white supremacist beliefs, even apologized to a white employee he accidentally shot before continuing his rampage. These disturbing examples reflect extreme forms of juvenile delinquency. But what's striking is that these teens were morally motivated. They believed their actions were for the greater good. In their minds, not committing these acts would have been morally wrong. As a psychological researcher, my work focuses on understanding how and why teens develop their moral beliefs, from these extreme cases to everyday questions like whether they should be honest with their parents or kind to their friends. Critical period of adolescence. Adolescence is a unique time for moral development. During this period, the brain undergoes synaptic pruning, where unnecessary neural connections are cut away, making room for stronger, more efficient pathways. This is a use it or lose it phase, and it's particularly important for the neural pathways involved in moral decision-making. Children's moral development starts with 3 primary categories: moral behaviors, rule-based behaviors, and personal preferences. Empathy plays a key role in helping children recognize moral behaviors and avoid causing harm. By the age of 4, most children understand the concept of fairness and begin to categorize situations as right or wrong based on empathy. At the same time, children learn about rules, some of which seem arbitrary, depending on cultural or social context. For instance, wearing clothes in public is expected in most places, but not on a beach in France. Then, there's the personal domain. Preferences like whether it's okay to eat pineapple on pizza. Of these categories, the moral domain is the most universal and has the strongest emotional impact. It often triggers feelings like anger or guilt, even in other animals like primates, who show similar emotional responses to unfair treatment. As children grow into adults, their moral framework expands. They begin to categorize moral violations in more complex ways. Adults, for instance, tend to see disrespect for authority as a serious moral issue, even when no harm is caused. How moral development changes in adulthood. Jonathan Haidt's Moral Foundations theory outlines several categories of moral judgment in adults: physical harm, justice, fairness, respect for authority, autonomy, loyalty, purity, and sanctity. While these categories have evolutionary roots, which ones dominate a person's moral judgments often depend on social and cultural identities. For instance, religious people tend to emphasize authority and purity, while politically liberal people focus more on physical harm and injustice. These moral categories can sometimes lead to contradictions. For example, an adult may view consensual same-sex relationships as morally wrong due to beliefs about purity, even though there's no harm involved. This kind of thinking can lead to extreme actions, like the violent behaviors seen in teenagers who are swayed by these beliefs. Teenagers and moral complexity. Teenagers are in a transitional phase where they begin to adopt more complex moral judgments. My research explores how teenagers rate the wrongness of different moral violations. For instance, they may rate acts of physical harm as very wrong, but they might have different opinions when it comes to disrespecting authority. My findings suggest that teens are influenced by a mix of childhood moral judgments and adult moral categories. For example, while teens care about harm to others, they're also beginning to consider more abstract violations, like disrespecting authority or personal autonomy. There's also a significant influence of gender and political identity on how teens form their moral judgments. Conservative teenage boys, for instance, show less concern for physical and emotional harm than their female peers, while liberal teens don't show these differences. This suggests that conservative boys may be more sensitive to societal norms that expect them to care less about harm and more about authority. In another study, we found that girls begin to show more mature moral judgments earlier than boys. By the age of 14, girls are already showing more adult-like moral reasoning, possibly due to earlier puberty and its influence on emotional systems in the brain. The importance of peer influence. During adolescence, teens are highly sensitive to peer influence. Fear of social ostracism is a powerful motivator. In extreme cases, this fear can lead teens to adopt harmful beliefs or commit acts of violence to maintain their membership in certain groups. This is why it's crucial to provide teens with safe environments practice solving complex social-emotional challenges. As teens begin to understand the moral implications of their social identities, they need opportunities to explore these ideas without fear of rejection. Positive peer groups, both in real life and online, play a key role in preventing moral development from being distorted by harmful influence. The internet complicates this, as teens can now find belonging in groups with extreme beliefs anywhere in the world. To limit the harm caused by juvenile delinquency, it's essential to offer teens access to prosocial peer groups, teaching moral complexity. Finally, educating teens about the connections between our evolutionary past, social groups, and moral beliefs can help them develop a more nuanced understanding of what's right and wrong. By creating a secular consensus around moral issues, we can help teens navigate the increasingly complex social landscape they'll face as adults. This kind of education can also help prevent the development of extreme beliefs like racism and homophobia, which can lead to violent behaviors. By providing teens with the tools to understand and challenge these beliefs, we give them the chance to develop into morally responsible adults.